Good morning and welcome back to Plannercraft. I'm Natalie and today we're going to be starting a 4-day project. So this is going to be a big one. So if you are a beginner, what I would suggest is that you watch the stream first. If you then feel confident enough to have a go, then by all means do try and join in and watch the video back and pause it as you need to. If you still don't feel confident enough to have a go, I will try and put the file up as an upload. And good morning, Thea. Don't know if your internet's glitching, but I've got like 3 notifications that you're watching this morning, Thea. Morning, Deb. Morning, Maggie. Hi, Mum. So I have got a tiny screen with comments, so bear with me if I miss anything. I'm sure Tracy can manage to drop me a message if there's any questions. So Tracy's going to be modding this session today, and we are live on the 16th of March at 11 AM. Just because when people watch this back, they don't always realise that these are live and unedited. And good morning, Louise. Okay, so let's start a new file. So today you can work in Affinity Designer, you can work in Inkscape, Corel, Illustrator, and if you have no other option, you can try and do it in Canvas. You should be able to do most of this process in Canvas, but there may be a few bits that you struggle with. So without too much further ado, now I'm going to start off with a 12 by 12 matte active area in Affinity. When I was doing this yesterday, I did do it onto a 12 by 24 artboard originally. So if that's an option for you, you can go for that one. But most of it will fit on a 12 by 12. Resolution, if you have the option, should be set to 96 dpi, and that's so that when we export to SVG and bring it into Canvas ready for cutting, it's going to come in at the correct size. Okay. Document units is your choice, whether you want to go millimeters or inches, but for this one you're probably going to find it easier to work in inches. And orientation I just leave as is. So for those of you that aren't that familiar with your active area, you're looking for a document that is 295.9 millimeters by 297.9 or 11.65 inches by 11.73, and it should be portrait. Colour really doesn't matter because we're not going to be using colour for this one, so don't get hung up on RGB or CMYK. Margins, again, we don't need them, so ignore them. And bleed is not an option with a cut file anyway. Go away. Naughty painter. So we're going to go to create, and that's going to create our artboard. And while we're working on this one today, we're just going to work on the one artboard to start with, just so that we can focus on the main elements of our drawing. Morning, Linda. Okay, so our armoire is made up of 6 3-inch squares that then have 0.6 inch gaps between them. So if you think of it like that, then it's fairly easy to get started. So we're going to go to our rectangle tool, and we're just going to click and drag, and if we press and hold shift, you can see that it pings to a square. So if I do that again, so you can see it pings like so, and then you can try and draw it accurately if you want to, but if you can't get it quite there, that's okay, we can use transform. So there's our square. We've got our transform panel down here bottom right, and we can go go and click in that, and we can just put 3. Now before I do that, if we look at this little icon to the right hand side, and this is the same in most software, you'll see that you've got a little padlock or something similar to that, and what that's basically doing is locking in proportion. So we're going to set that to 3, and both our width and our height are automatically going to change to 3. Good morning, Linda. So far, Linda, I've started a new document using our active area and brought in a rectangle that is 3 inches square. How many of you are creating along this morning? Being brave. Okay, so with our 3-inch square now in, we want to have another copy, like so. Then if we highlight both of them, go up to our align panel, and I want to align the space between them, like so. Now when we do that, we can see that it's automatically gone to 0. We're going to change that to 0.6. Now if you're working in Corel, the way I did it yesterday was to use step and repeat, and I created 9 squares and just deleted the ones I didn't need. So 3 across and 3 down. That's okay, Joyce, you just take your time. So 0.6 and enter, and you can see it's going to put that 0.6 inch gap in between. And we can go apply at this point. Now we're happy with the relationship between those two shapes, and essentially what we need is another 2 copies of that. So by grouping it, we're keeping those together and organised. So then we're going to go and put another one here, and we can do the same again. So we're going to select both, we're going to go up to align, and this time we can do the vertical space and just make sure that it's lined up too. And we're going to put in 0.6 here too. Okay, I'm going to click off that one. Now for the fun one, because you can see now it's going to automatically put in that 0.6, but what we also need it to do is start to see these squares in here. So to do that, we need to ungroup it. So we'll select all of those, just using Shift and click, so they will turn blue. And we can ungroup using Command Shift and G or Control Shift and G on a PC. Okay. We're going to highlight those bottom 2 because we know that those are the ones that might not be quite aligned. And now if we do that, we can see that we've not only got our red figures indicating the spaces, but we've also got our green vertical line showing that they are in line. So hopefully now you have something that looks a bit like this. I'm going to take all of those and I'm going to group them. If we go to line, we can actually center those in our page, like so. So hopefully you're all with me so far. If anybody wants me to slow down, don't be afraid to just say woo or ask any questions that you need to. If it takes a couple of days to get this first bit done, I don't mind, because it is quite complex. So now we're going to use our guides, and the guides are going to be there to help us do our drawing in a minute. So while our squares are just there to help us set up our guide structure, we can then start to actually draw around these squares to actually create our net. So to bring in a guide, you're typically going to click on your ruler and drag downwards with your mouse button still depressed. and you're going to see it's going to want to snap to objects. So that should be the same whether you're working in Illustrator, Inkscape, Corel or Affinity. Now if you are doing this in Canvas, you don't have guides as an option, but what you can do instead is you can actually create paths that you can use as guides. What I would say is once you've created your path in Canvas and you've got it aligned to the top of your box, do lock it. So we're going to place a guide at every intersection point. Now if it helps in your software, I'm just going to ungroup that just so that I can get my snap points, like so. Some software will happily do it with it still grouped. But as you can see, the snap does make things a lot quicker. And we can take it across this way. And we're essentially going to end up with a grid, and like so. Okay. So onto our squares, we're going to need to build the sides of our little shelving unit. And to do that, we need to also set ourselves a little set of guides that go round the border to do our side tabs that stick outside of our squares. So the really easy way to do that is if we grab our rectangle tool, we're going to click and drag so that we have a measurement that forms our gap, if that makes sense. So this is one of the tricks of the graphics industry. So if you're wondering how we always get our business cards all perfectly placed, it's because we use little squares in the top left hand corner to position them all, like so. We're going to move that up to the top, like so, and we're going to place a guide. We're going to take it to the right, and we're going to place the guide. We're going to take it down to the bottom, we're going to place a guide. And that's pretty much all that we need because we don't have one that comes off this side. So at this point, don't get hung up on whether it's going to go off the paper or whatnot. Basically, creating it at this size, if you're going to be working on a 12 by 12 mat, it is going to shrink slightly, but that's okay so long as we work all in the same document and it all shrink by the same amount then. And we can delete that rectangle that we've used for a guide. Thank you. Are you going to say hello and bye?
I'm not on lunch yet, so
okay.
We're just on a short break. So yeah. Hello everybody. Bye everybody. Back to work. Sitting and watching.
Okay. Okay. So now that we have our basic structure, we can now start to work in this for our actual net. So everything that we've done up to this point, we want to make sure is locked and is the guide. So if you have the option, you can go into Guides Manager, or sometimes there's one that just says Lock Guides. And that means that then we can't move any of these guides by accident, and that's important. With our rectangles, I'm going to group them, and I'm going to lock them so that we can't accidentally click on those either. Locking is really useful for anything where we know we need to be 100% accurate, and 3D projects is definitely one of those times when you want to make sure that you're spot on. So, now for the exciting bit. been looking into getting Affinity Designer, there seems to be a few options which one you're working with. Okay, so I'm working it in Affinity Designer for the Mac. In terms of there being a few options, there's only really two. So you have the computer-based one, which is for PC and Mac, which is what I'm in. Or you have the iPad tablet version. Both of which you can do this exact same process with. So if you only have an iPad and you're looking at this thinking that you can't do it, that's not true. You can definitely do it. So now I'm going to get my pen tool or my path tool, and those of you that have the new book that have been working through your pen tool section are probably going, oh no, but it's okay, we're going to go through it nice and slowly. So I'm going to start off just here. So that's the left hand guide point to our top left square. An oval one. Okay, we're going to click, and that's going to start our path, if we're lucky, if it doesn't think about it too much. Okay, we're going to go straight up to that next intersection, and we're going to click again, and there's our curve. We're going to go right one, we're going to go up one, we're going to go right one, and we're going to go down one, right one, up one, right one. Now this is going to be where we're going to do a nice big long line, and we're going to go right down to the top right hand corner of our fourth square. So can you all see that okay? So we're going to click down there. We're going to go right one, down one, left one, down one, then we're going to go left one, up one, left one, down one. Now this is going to be the fun one. So if we try and do a right one at this point, you could potentially, depending on which software you're in, actually remove this node here. So what we actually do is that end up drawing inaccurately for now, and we're just going to drop that point along that line like so. Okay, so you've got a square but it's got 5 points in it, and that's just so that we're not deleting any points that we've already done, and we're not creating any issues in terms of intersection and so forth. And our next point is going to be down one, so that's to the right of the square. Okay, so I was giving you a nice bit of quiet there just so the subtitles got out the way. So, left one, down one, left one, up one. Okay, now we're going to go for another bit of a stretch, and we're going to go to the bottom left corner of the bottom left square. Okay, so hopefully you've seen that now. Now we're going to go up two and right one, down one, right one. Now for another nice tricky bit. we're going to go all the way up to the bottom left corner of that top square. We're going to click. Okay. We're going to go right 2. We're going to go down 1. Left 1. Up 1. Now, if it's highlighting these nodes like this, what that means is it's going to put a new node up on that line, which isn't what we want. So for now, we're going to do the same as what we did down that bottom section. I'm going to click so we're not quite all the way there. Okay. And to finish off, we're going to go back to our very first point, and that's going to complete the path. So what I will do, just so that you can see this a little bit better when I come to move the nodes and things, I'm just going to make it a little bit stronger. So remember, the boldness of our line makes no difference to our machine whatsoever, but it does help our eyesight on occasion. Okay, so now we're going to go to our node tool, which is usually A. So if you just hit the letter A on your keyboard, you should go to the node tool. We're going to select our first node of that little square in the middle, where it's gone slightly off that line. And we're going to click and drag so that we move it up to that bottom right hand corner of that first square, like so. Got a bit of a headache, Sarah Lou, but other than that I'm okay. Now to sort out this square down here, we're going to take this node here and we're going to overlap it with our bottom left node of that next tab just there, so that we have a nice neat square there too. So if I click off, you should have something that now looks like this. How are you all doing if you're doing live? Okay, so next we need to do glue tabs, and there's a nice simple way that we can do those. So we're going to go back to our pen tool and we're going to click somewhere along our side tab here. So basically almost wherever we've got a side tab like this, it needs to have a glue tab on the end of it. So I'm going to click on that side, we're going to click up to that point on our side tab, we're going to, and don't get too hung up on the angle at this point, if you want to come back and tidy it all up at the end you can do, but just for now you're going to angle it in. Okay, we're going to take that across as a straight line. So you can see when you're working in Affinity, it's going to come up with a little red guide. If you're working in Illustrator, it's where your smart guides are going to kick in. And we can click, go down to this right hand point, halfway down, and join the dots. So that's going to give us a nice glue tab. And we overlap it that much so that we know it's going to merge properly first time. We've got our guides underneath, so we don't have to worry about knowing where we need to do our score lines, because we can use our guides to set those in a bit. So this is one of the reasons why I say it is easier to work in something like Affinity or Illustrator, where you have the option to use guides until the point where Canvas can do guides. And as I said, you can fake them with a path tool if you want to in Canvas, but it can be a bit trickier. So now we need to take that glue tab and we need to apply it to everywhere where there is a side tab, apart from this bottom one here, and that's important. Okay, so this one you don't want to put a glue tab on, but all the others you want to. So depending on your software, sometimes you need to go to edit and duplicate if you're working in Corel, for instance. If you're working in Canvas, Illustrator, Affinity, you can just use the Alt key and click and drag to drag a copy, like so, and the key press is slightly different in Inkscape. So there's our first tab, and we're going to need another one down here. And I will fix that in a minute in terms of where it's aligning. We need to have 3 more for these, and they're all going to be at different angles. So bring a copy down, then press and hold Shift, and we're going to rotate it round. So by pressing and holding Shift, that's going to make it snap to 15, 30, 60, 45 and 90 degree angles. You can see that in Affinity it's actually telling it's at 90 degrees, and you can let go of the mouse and then let go of Shift. So always when you're using Shift to constrain something, let go of the mouse first and then let go of Shift. If you do it the other way around, you can find that things go slightly wonky. So we're going to click and drag that up there. As I said, we can fix any alignment issues in a minute. And we're going to want one more, actually, before I go too far. So this one here, and line that up a bit better. Where we've got these 2 corners meeting, we actually need a 45 degree angle in here. So what we can do, I'm just going to highlight my node, press and hold Shift, and I'm just going to drag it down so it's roughly 45. Okay, and let's cheat while I'm here. I'm just going to drop in another little glue tab like so. So that means that we know that those 2 cut lines are sitting on top of one another, so we're not getting anything a bit weird going on. Now what you may find when you do your merge is you may lose that line depending on the software that you're using. So you can always pop that back in as a separate path if need be. So we should now have a glue tab to our top 2 side pieces. We've done our bottom section here, one here, and we finally have one here. So we can take a copy, press and hold Shift, rotate it around the other way, or you can just use your mirror options. So I'm just going to quickly go around and just check all my alignments are spot on. And that one's a little high, so let's just take that down a touch. So when we're aligning our shapes to our guides, you want to pay attention to the blue centre line and not your black path around the outside. It's that blue centre line that is important. So those of you that read the book are going, yep, the path and the stroke. 2 different things. Okay. Okay, so now that we've done our glue tabs and we know that they're all aligned correctly, we can now select all of them under our outlined net and we're going to merge it together. And if it's good, it's going to do that. So hopefully you now have something that looks a bit like that, and you can see it's just lost one line just there. I think I can forgive it that. So yesterday when I was testing this out, I actually did it in Corel. So I thought I'd test out some different software while I was at it, because Corel's just done a big update. And we've only got it till the end of the month, so I thought it was a good opportunity to just see whether it's worth keeping it or not. Okay, so let's say you've lost this line in here like me. All you're going to do is we're just going to grab the pen tool. Let's just click off that a second. And we're just going to join the dots underneath, like so. Okay. So I'm going to put that cut line in there. It kept our cut line down here, so we know that that's all okay. So now we can group that and we can call that cut. Now, because this is quite a complicated little folding box, you've got both mountain and valley folds. So if for this process you want to keep it nice and simple, you can put them all as the same score line. It can get a bit complicated when you actually come to fold it up, if that's the case. So I've actually split it up so that we can differentiate between the mountains and the valleys to make life a little easier should you need it. So I'm going to start off by doing all the valley score lines. And then we can group those, and then I'll do all the mountain ones. So bear in mind that as we move through this, how your software, as in your particular software, exports to SVG, and how that SVG then comes into Canvas. So like I was working with Corel yesterday, and it basically lost all the information and it all came in with a black fill. So that is something to bear in mind. So you end up having to use groups to organise data. So we're going to go back to our pen tool, and let's just click off that group because I don't want it to go into the group. And we're going to go and do our first score line, like so. If you press V in Affinity, or if you hit enter in Illustrator or Corel, I think Inkscape is an enter off the top of my head as well. Or in Canvas, you just have to do a click and a click at the end of an open path. So you click back on your same finishing node. I'm going to set that so it's a dashed line. I'm going to put a little bit of a gap between them. Maybe not quite that much. Let's go for 3. Let's make it a little bit thinner. So what I would say is when you're done, actually take all your stroke bits down to a sensible size, but it's good for you to be able to see it. I'm going to change my stroke to a colour as well so you can really see it above that guide. Let's go for a purple. Okay. So there's our first score line. Now if we click again, that's going to automatically continue that line, which isn't what we want it to do. We want to continue back to the next one. So click off it, go back to P, and we can add that in there. So now, because we're going to continue off that same point, we may as well continue that same path. So we're going to go across 1, and we're going to go down 1. Okay, press V, click off it, press P to go back to the pen tool, and we can do the next. Okay, so we're going to do across that top tab so it's ready for folding it and gluing. Okay, then we're just going to do this one side of this square. So that's our first base of our armoire now done and scored. We're going to leave these next score lines, and we're going to come down to this next row. So we have one just in here, and click off. Then we have a U, so we're going to start top right corner of this square, go down, across and back up, and click off. Then we need to do our glue tab, and if anything looks like it's just gone off, it's because it's snapped to a node rather than the grid. Don't worry about that at this point, because we'll want to go back and just check that everything is correctly lining up anyway. And then we're going to do our next bit, and we're going to go to the top left of the next square, to the top right of that square, and down to the bottom right, and click off. Then we're going to do glue tab, and if those two join, don't worry about it. Then we're going to do another U again, so starting top right, bottom left, and back up, so we have another U. Press V, click off, P again. So bottom right of the next square, top right and top left, and then one last glue tab to finish off. So those are all our valley folds. So if we take all of those and group them, we can give it the name of valley folds. So basically now we need to put in our mounting folds, and they're going to be wherever we don't already have a score line. So if we go to our pen tool, and let's change the colour to a red, and we'll even change our dash pattern. So we'll swap the numbers around, so let's go for a 3 and a 1. So what I would say is, when you're thinking about score dashes, don't think about cutting them necessarily. So while you might want to do that on your mock-up, on your finished card or finished project, you definitely don't want to be cutting these lines. You should be scoring them or drawing them and then scoring on a separate scoreboard. Okay, so now we have our first fold. V, click off, P, and then we go again. If you do suffer with any of your paths trying to link back to your valley folds, you can always use the lock on the group to stop that from happening. And we can group those together and we can call those mountain folds. And if we hide our base group now, we should be able to see our net a little bit clearer. So if you can see any gaps in that, then you need to kind of work out which stroke you're missing. And just let me know in the comments if you need any help so far. You can also hide the guides if you want to, so it's a bit easier for you to see. But once you have all your lines in place, we're going to then check alignment. So don't remove your guides, you're just hiding them away just so that you can see your net a little clearer. So some of my guides I know don't quite line up where I want them to. So this is where we're going to go back to our node tool, so A, and we can click on our group and then we can actually see which line has gone slightly askew. So I want to go for, it's not that one looks promising. So we can see that it wasn't quite lined up onto that intersection of the grid. So I want to make sure it's on that grid and not going slightly off. Same with this one, just because I know it wasn't lined up before, and I want to make sure it's smack on. And then the bottom here too. So with our cut group, you also want to check that there's nothing in there that's gone slightly awry. So where we've done our welding, for instance, like here, we can actually get more points than we actually need. So we can just delete those out. So you want to make sure that you just have your minimum amount of nodes in your net. You never really want to have more than you actually need to. So just here, if you see there's something a bit weird going on, don't be afraid to pull it out and just check that they are lining up where they should do. So on the intersection of that grid, and then you know that it's right. And that's why we set up guides and we take the time to do so, because we want to make sure that our file is accurate. And just by doing these last few checks, we're actually preventing frustration later on. So you want to go through, check all your score lines, check all your nodes. So there's one there that's where it shouldn't be. We can just delete that out the way. And one there. And we should be good to go. So for those of you that are crafting along live, can you let me know if you're okay up to that point? Because I don't want to run before you can say whether you're okay or not. And then the next thing to do is, where we've got these elements that are overhanging, what we're actually going to have to do is increase our artboard so that we can actually fit those on. Then when it's exported to SVG and into Canvas, it's going to shrink it. But before I go too far, most importantly, do a save as. Because if we've done all this hard work, the last thing we want to do is lose it. So I'm just going to drop it onto my desktop for now. I've given it the name of Armoir Gift box. And I'll correct my spelling too. So that's just saved as an AF design file, so that's not exported to SVG yet. that's just like the native format. So it's more or less in the middle. If we go to our artboard tool, you can see that we can add in a new artboard if we want to. And we can actually click on our current artboard and move that around as well if we need to. So, preferably not like that. Let's get rid of these so we can... There we go. So I'm going to group all those together. Just so I can get to my artboard. So if I go to document setup, I'm going to increase that, so let's try it. Just about fitted on the 12 by 24, so let's go for the 12 by 12 and see how it goes. And I don't want to rescale, so that's important, so just go anchor. Okay. So I'm just going to check that didn't rescale, because that's the last thing I wanted to do. Nope, we're still on a nice 3-inch square in there. So you can always do that at any point if you need to measure. I'm sure you'll be fine, Joyce, but if you do have any questions, I will be about. And let's just drop that in there. So you can see it literally just fits in. Like so. And to make life nice and easy, I can go into a group, select it, and then I can sort out my stroke and so forth all at once. So I want plain stroke. I'm going to drop it so it goes back down and it's a little bit more sensible then. Valley fold again, we can set to a dash, drop the size down, and until we change the colour it won't change that anyway, so you can see as we go up the size your dashes scale with it anyway. And finally do mounting folds, dash. I'm just going to bring those down and I'm just going to increase that gap again. Let's get a little bit bigger. There we go. Just so we can see a bit more obviously the difference. So if I zoom in, you can see then the difference between our valley fold and our mounting. I'm going to hit save so we don't lose any of what we've done, and I'm going to go to export to my scan and cut settings, 96 DPI. Even though nothing is rasterizing, that DPI is still important. So you won't believe the number of people I end up going, nope, you still have to do your DPI even though it's not rasterizing it, it still uses it even though it shouldn't. If you go into more, make sure you untick set view box is the other important one. So if that is ticked, it will go into the online version of Canvas correctly, but it won't be the right size when you go into the offline Canvas. Okay, and if you want to create a preset, you can go down to manage presets and create a scan and cut one the same way that I have. And we'll go close and we'll go export and back to the desktop. Now just because I was working with some SVG files yesterday, I'm just going to give it a new name. So if I go and put live, then I know that that's the one I created in the live stream, and save. Now at this point you can take it into Canvas in the usual way. It will rescale for your 12x12 mat, and you can cut it out and assemble it. So all the glue tabs will need glue. You also stick together these two tabs here, and then you create the little box that I posted yesterday. And then that's ready for us to do drawers tomorrow. So we've done really well today. So give yourself a good pat on the back when you do finish it. And we will see you tomorrow at the same time. So there are events scheduled for each of the hours this week. So do say that you are going. Always comment, and it does help to get things out there then. Okay. Any questions before I go? Or any particular software questions? So given that I've created this in Affinity today, are there any questions about using other software such as Illustrator, Corel, Inkscape or Canvas? You're welcome, Tracy. You gotta love subtitles, haven't you? Inkscape. Yes, you can use Go. I knew there was one I was forgetting to mention. So when you're done, feel free to pop up a screenshot of the file, especially if you want me to help you with anything in particular. And then you can rough it out, and I just used a bit of 250 GSM card just to mock it up with, just to check that everything is working as it should. Then tomorrow we'll create the little drawers, and then the plan is Thursday we'll actually build the main section of it so that we have our base unit. Then Friday we will do the little mirror to go on the top, and that should be relatively quick. So do let me know if you'd like to see more projects like this in the future. I have a few in mind that you might like to do. But next week I'm thinking of doing some layered images that we can use for things like condolence cards. Yeah, Affinity is pretty cool. I think it's the most user friendly out there. Plus it's just a pay once and half price at the moment, so you can't go wrong, can you really, with that? So take care, and I'll see you tomorrow. Any problems, do drop me a message or post a screenshot in the group. So you could do that into the Designing with Vectors group if you have the book. You could put that into our main Scan and Cut group if you like. And we can go from there. Take care, and I'll see you tomorrow at 11. Bye for now.